House will please be in order. Those not having privileges of the floor will please vacate the chamber at this time. All members and guests in the galleries will please rise as we are led in prayer this morning by Melissa Pratt, guest of the lady from the 38th Delegate Graves.
Let's pray. Father God, we thank you for an opportunity to look to you, to be reminded that you are sovereign, that you have answers, you have power, you have authority. God, in Jesus' name, I'm asking that you would help us to lead well, making decisions based on your wisdom, your vision for this place at this time. Your word tells us not to lean on our own understanding. So, Lord, today we lay aside anything that would be of the flesh or a human origin, and we ask, God, that you would give us divine guidance for the discussions. Be seen, be experienced, be glorified and magnified. Thank you for each leader here, for each sacrifice that's made. Bless them, help them to walk in wellness and to live with integrity and to be the leader that you would have them to be. In the name of Jesus Christ, I pray. Amen.
Amen. Members and guests in the galleries will please remain standing as we are led in the Pledge of Allegiance today by the lady from the 38th Delegate Graves.
Thank you.
If everyone will please join me in saluting the flag of the greatest country on earth. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Members and guests may be seated. Reading of the Journal.
Journal of the House of Delegates, Charleston, Wednesday, February 6, 2019.
Gentleman from the 44th, Delegate Hannah.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that further reading of the journal be dispensed with and that it be approved as having been read.
Gentleman from the 44th, ask unanimous consent that further reading of the journal be dispensed with and that it be approved as having been read. Are there objections? Chair hears no objections. Introduction to guests. Introduction to guests. Lady from the 32nd, Delegate Staggers.
Mr. Speaker, today with us we have one of our former delegates, my dear friend, Dr. David Perry. He's president of the State Board of Education, sitting right back here waiting. Give him a big hand.
Gentleman from the 34th, Delegate Boggs.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And here for Veterans Visibility Day, it gives me great honor to introduce two great friends in the South Gallery, Butch and Debbie McPherson. If they would stand, Butch is here in part of Veterans Visibility Day, and he's a Vietnam veteran and serves as the post commander for VFW Post 3757 in Burnsville. And I might add, Butch and Debbie are the parents of our very own Jennifer McPherson. So please make them welcome.
Lady from the 32nd, Delegate Kessinger.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On behalf of the delegates from the 32nd District, I'm very proud to welcome my friend and constituent, Esther Morey. She's in the gallery today. She runs a program in Fayette County called CODA that deals with at-risk children and after-school programs and summer camps. So if she would stand and the House make her welcome.
Gentleman from the 50th, Delegate Angelucci.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In the South Gallery, would the House please welcome a dear friend of mine and a public health advocate, Christine Compton from the American Heart Association.
Gentleman from the 35th, Delegate Capito.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, thank you very much. We have a constituent of yours in the West Gallery, and I'm honored to be able to introduce her today. Emily Holcomb, if she would stand up. She currently attends Clay County High School, and we're glad to have her with us today. Thank you, Emily. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman from the 48th, Delegate Miley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On behalf of all of the delegates from the 48th District, we have some guests down here this evening or this morning with us. They're in the gallery somewhere because there's a number of them. We have from the Harrison County Education Association, Greg Phillips, Cindy Hudson, Kathy Pizzino, Lily Junkins, and others. And from the AFT, we have Adam King, Fred Wilhelm, and Jim Dawson. And we have Dr. Mark Manchin, our county superintendent, and board member Gary Hamrick. If the House would make them all feel welcome, if they would stand.
Gentleman with 17th, Doug Lovejoy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have some special guests here. Paging, I've got Max and Isaac Specht, if you guys would stand up. I've also got my two sons, Dylan Lovejoy and Ethan Lovejoy, here somewhere. And over in the South Gallery is my wife, Sarah, who's their chaperone today. Please make them welcome.
Gentleman with 19th, Doug Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On behalf of myself and Delegate Hicks, we have several pages here today from Wayne High School. They're all my students at Wayne, and two of them are Benny Maynard and Kelton Creed. If they would please rise and everybody give them a round of applause.
Gentleman with 19th, Doug Hicks.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On behalf of Mr. Thompson, Delegate Thompson, myself, the other delegates of Wayne County, I'd like to announce that we have some Wayne High School students here serving as pages, and these pages are Chase Jackson and Kelton Creed. House, please make them welcome.
Gentleman 19th, Doug Thompson.
Sorry, Mr. Speaker. We do have one other. It's Cole Kiley. He's also down there from Wayne High School, too, so thank you.
The gentleman with 26th, Doug Evans.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have visiting pages with us today from what I think is one of the best schools in all of West Virginia. Their test scores are just phenomenal, and that is Anna Wald Elementary School. And the kids that are paging for us today are Landon Belcher, if you'd stand, Isaac Fowler, if you would stand, and Zoe Rife, if you would stand. They are accompanied today by Denise Fowler and Amanda Belcher, who, by the way, are two of my former students. I guess the circle has come full circle there. Along with them are Angela Dale and Diane Rose. So would you make them all feel welcome? Thank you.
Gentleman with 28th, Doug Pack.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On behalf of the gentleman from 28th, Delegate Cooper, and myself, in the North Gallery today, joining us from the Shady Spring area today is my first cousin, Dave Pack. He's an educator in Raleigh County, and his daughter, Mila, and they're down enjoying the Capitol for the day. If the House would please make them welcome.
Gentleman 24th, Doug Rodriguero.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On behalf of Delegate Tom and myself, we have some pages from Mann High School. We have a Noah Ellis. Would you please stand when I say your name? Noah Ellis, Nicholas Vance, Cameron Zilli, Dalton Holt, Seth Wingler, and they're accompanied by Christine Wingler, Paula Holt, looks like Nikki Tiller, Kim Vance, and Pam Barron, I think. Would the floors please make them welcome? Thank you.
Gentleman 16th, Doug Linville.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On behalf of the gentleman from the 17th, Delegate Lovejoy, and myself, I would like to recognize Shelby Lee Hill, who is a survivor of congenital stenosis of the aortic valve, and in honor of February being Heart Awareness Month, would the House please stand, would she please stand, and would the House make her feel welcome?
Gentleman 23rd, Doug Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to introduce and welcome some students we have from Scott High School in Boone County. So on behalf of myself and the gentleman from the 22nd and 24th, if they would stand when I call their names, members of the leadership of the newly created Scott High School Young Dems, we have their chaperone, Heather Ritter, members Noah Gerald, Grace Thompson, Will Petrie, and Bailey Weaver. If the House would please make them feel welcome.
Gentleman the 9th, Doug Holland.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today in the North Gallery, we have the Work County 8th grade class. escorting the class is the Superintendent Mary Jane Pope Albin, Middle School Principal Dr. Tupper, teachers Mr. Root, Mrs. Bevel, and Brandy Chris Johns, who is also the daughter of the delegate from the 10th, Vernon Chris. If a house can make them feel welcome. Also, somewhere in one of the galleries, I can't see them from where I'm sitting, I've got some fellow members from the Wood County DAV Chapter 32 present. We've got Jack Bell, Arnold Carpenter, Mike Davis, and Jerry Smith, if the house can make them feel welcome.
Lady from the 51st, Delegate Walker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to introduce my friends in the South and the West Gallery who are here for All Kinds Are Welcome Day. Please take a stand, everyone. They are here today to advocate for fair, equitable policies in our state and to show that all kinds are welcome in West Virginia. Please give them a warm welcome.
Gentleman from the 14th, Delegate Butler.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Joining us with the PAGE program today from Point Pleasant Intermediate School, and if the students and the parents would stand as I announce your names, Amberlyn Roten with her mom Hope Facemeyer, Avery Hessen with parents Kara and Daryl Shaw, Alex Schrader with J.D. Schrader, his dad, and also Brian Bryant and his mom Elizabeth Boyd. Would the House please welcome them?
Are there further introductions? If not, reports to standing committees.
Committee on Finance had under consideration House Bill 2415, requiring the State Board of Education to adopt a policy detailing the appropriate level of computer science instruction. Reports the same back with recommendation that it do pass.
Report to be received.
Committee on Finances had under consideration House Bill 2405, imposing a healthcare-related provider tax on certain healthcare organizations. House Bill 2674, creating a student loan
to dispense with the committee reference and have read for a first time.
Lady from the 49th asked unanimous consent that the committee reference of Senate Bill 267 be dispensed with. The bill be taken up for immediate consideration and read a first time. Is there objection? Is there objection? Chair hears no objection. Clerk will read the bill a first time.
Senate Bill 267.
Bill will be advanced. Further bills, further message from the Senate.
The Senate has passed committee.
Here's no objection. Clerk will read the bill the first time.
Senate Bill 267.
Bill will be advanced. Further bills, further message from the Senate.
The Senate has passed committee.
Here's no objection. Clerk will read the bill the first time.
Senate Bill 267.
Bill will be advanced. Further bills, further message from the Senate.
The Senate has passed committee. A substitute for Senate Bill 387 relating generally to extradition.
Message will be received. Bill will be referred to the Committee on Judiciary. Are there further messages from the Senate? If not, resolutions.
House Concurrent Resolution 54, United States Navy Aviation Ordnanceman Airman David Wayne Cornell Memorial Bridge.
Lady from the 49th.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that further reading of resolutions introduced be dispensed with and that they be considered as formally introduced and referred to the appropriate committees as indicated on the chamber automation system.
Lady from the 49th, ask unanimous consent that further reading of resolutions introduced be dispensed with, that each resolution be considered as having been formally introduced and referred to the appropriate committees as shown on the chamber automation system. Is there objection? Do the gentleman from the 42nd and 13th object? Okay, are there objections? Chair hears no objections. Petitions, motions, bills introduced.
House Bill 2879, authorizing lifetime hunting, fishing, and trapping licenses for foster or adoptive children.
Chair's in error. Chair did not see the recognition light from the gentleman from the 3rd, Douglas Fluharty.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. For the motion stage, I just want to hit the light.
Yes.
Per Rule 82, I'd like to make a motion to discharge House Bill 2733 after having been in the committee for 5 days. House Bill 2733, adding sexual orientation and gender identification to the categories covered by the Human Rights Act.
Gentleman from the 3rd moves that House Bill 2733 be discharged from the Committee on Judiciary. The question before the House is the motion by the gentleman from the 3rd.
Mr. Speaker,
Lady from the 49th.
I move that the motion be tabled.
Lady from the 49th moves that the motion be tabled. The question before the House is a non-debatable question. For what purpose does the gentleman from the 50th seek recognition?
Point of order, Mr. Chairman.
Gentleman,
Mr.
take his
Speaker, I'm
point.
sorry. If I want to support the gentleman's motion to discharge the anti-discrimination bill, my vote would be red. Is that correct?
A no on the motion to table. Yes, sir. Gentleman's
Thank you,
correct. The question before the House is a motion by the lady from the 49th that the roll call has been demanded. Is demand sustained? Demand is sustained. Question before the House is a motion by the lady from the 49th that the motion to discharge House Bill 2733 be laid upon the table. Those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On this question, 58 ayes, 40 nays, 2 members absent not voting. More than a majority of those present having voted in the affirmative, Chair declares the motion adopted. Bills introduced.
House Bill 2879, authorizing lifetime hunting, fishing, and trapping licenses for foster or adoptive children.
Lady from the 49th.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that further reading of bills introduced be dispensed with and they be considered as formally introduced and referred to the appropriate committees as indicated on the chamber automation system.
Lady from the 49th, ask unanimous consent that further reading of bills introduced be dispensed with, that each bill be considered as having been formally introduced and referred to the appropriate committees as shown on the chamber automation system. Are there objections? Are there objections? Chair hears no objections. So ordered. Unfinished business. Bills on 3rd reading.
Senate Bill 324, relating to Commissioner of Agriculture employees.
Gentleman from the 56th, Delegate Howell, to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The purpose of this bill is to allow the Commissioner of Agriculture to hire a general counsel and other staff necessary to perform his or her duties. Other staff to the Commissioner would be permitted to hire include legal, business, science, and technology professionals, paraprofessionals, and expert. The bill provides that the Commissioner will periodically certify to the state auditor an itemized account of all expenditures regarding employee hiring and other purposes. In addition, the Commissioner will submit an itemized statement of all monies received by him or her to the auditor and treasurer after the first 10 days of each month and pay that money to the state treasurer. I urge passage.
Question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Are there members who wish to speak to the passage of the bill? If not, the question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On this question, 98 ayes, 0 nays, 2 members absent not voting. More than a majority of those elected having voted in the affirmative, Chair declares the bill passed. Clerk, please report the title.
Senate Bill 324.
Are there amendments to the title? If not, title as read by the clerk will be and remain the title of the bill. Lady from the 49th.
Mr. Speaker, I move that the bill take effect from its passage.
Lady from the 49th moves that the bill be made effective from passage. Those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine or ascertain the result. On this question, 98 ayes, 0 nays, 2 members absent, not voting. 2/3 of those elected having voted in the affirmative, chair declares the bill effective from passage. Clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate. Next bill on third reading.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2204, prohibiting state licensing boards from hiring lobbyists.
Gentleman from the 35th, Douglas Capito, to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Chapter 30 of the West Virginia Code requires that certain professionals are licensed by professional licensing boards. The bill before us, what it simply does is it says that those boards are not permitted to use any funds within the board to hire registered lobbyists. The bill does provide advocating on behalf of these boards by the executive directors and the board council. This is viewed as a cost-saving measure so that the members of the board and the professional licensing fees aren't used for lobbying services. That's the bill, Mr. Speaker, and I urge passage.
Question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Are the members who wish to speak to the passage of the bill? Gentleman from 36, Delegate Rowe.
A question of the gentleman.
Gentleman does yield.
Is this a problem? Do we have lots of boards with lobbyists running around, or is this just very limited?
I'm not sure the exact to my friend. I'm not sure the exact number, but I think if it were the proponents of the bill would say if it were one, it's one too many.
Well, and it was my hearing that there was only one board that had an employed lobbyist.
Disclosed on registered lobbyist forms.
Now, but they would be required to, correct?
The
lobbyists would.
They are required to, yes, sir.
But now, it wouldn't prevent someone coming up and speaking on behalf of the board in regard to particular legislation if they weren't being employed, correct?
If they were not being paid, that's correct.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Are there further members who wish to speak to the passage of the bill? Gentleman from the 23rd, Delegate Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would the gentleman please
Chairman
yield?
does yield.
How would this apply to agency experts, technicians, or scientists that may be employed by a state agency if their expertise was needed, or if they wanted to advocate for or against a certain position in the legislature?
Well, if they were a state employee, I'm not sure that they would be a registered lobbyist. So as long as they weren't a registered lobbyist, I don't see an issue.
The way I read this, it says no board may employ or contract with any person, include which their functions or obligations include lobbying on behalf of, except for directors, board council, appointed board members. But we're talking about employees thereof if they're an expert in a field.
Yeah, I'm informed, you don't have to be a lobbyist to testify on technical and professional expertise. So I don't think there's anything in the bill that prevents what you're referring to.
So if an agency wanted to send a water or air quality expert over to advocate for or against a piece of legislation we're considering, they can do that by this rule, or they cannot, since they are not a director, board council, or appointed board member?
Yeah, I think, advocacy would be lobbying. I think this speaks directly to registered lobbyists. I think hiring someone who's, is in your example, I guess the answer is it depends. So if the primary purpose of the professional or the expertise that you would be obtaining to testify, if their primary job is to lobby, then I think that we would have an issue under this bill. If their primary purpose under what their normal job is not lobbying activity, I think that it would be permissible.
But it also does say, if you would agree or not, that on line 2 it says include lobbying. It doesn't say anything about their primary function. It talks about the inclusion of lobbying. Am I reading that correct or not?
Nothing in you're reading that is how I read it. You read it correctly. I don't think anything in this bill prevents advocacy or lobbying with a small L, if you will. But I think what we're trying to curb here is, quite frankly, the use of monies for professionals that are being licensed to further regulate the profession that they're trying to grow in.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman from the 58th, Douglas Coles.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Will the Vice Chairman continue to yield?
Vice Chairman does yield.
Thank you. I share some of the concerns on free speech issues, and I was wondering, do other states also have this prohibition?
Others, I think that similar, Chief's fine, by the way, that works. But the other states have implemented similar laws. As far as the constitutional and free speech issues, we did hear testimony on this in committee, and really what we're talking about is we're talking about intergovernmental communication, and I think it probably is the province of the government to regulate communication between the government. And furthermore, in 2015, the Supreme Court actually ruled in a case that spoke specifically to occupational licensing boards, and that in that case, the judges were very probative of the oversight that the legislature was having on these boards, and showed a lot of concern that a lot of the money that was being generated by these boards was going, in fact, to lobbying efforts, and not, in fact, to the deregulation or the furtherance of the profession that they were actually overseeing.
Very good, then. Thank you.
Gentleman from the 34th, Douglas Boggs.
Gentleman will continue to yield.
Vice Chairman continue to yield.
Over here. Over here.
Yes.
Thank you. Could you give us an example or two of some of the boards that you're mentioning under Chapter 30? I know the bill does not spell that out.
I mean, I think it would be any board under Chapter 30. So anyone you can, I mean,
For
we can have the
instance.
code opened and I can read one off, but barbers?
Okay, so we're talking about those, and we're not talking about expanding it beyond Chapter 30 where we would get into higher ed or anything like that.
This only contemplates Chapter 30 boards.
Only Chapter 30?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Are there further members who wish to speak to the passage of the bill? If not, does the gentleman wish to close debate? If not, the question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On this question, 84 ayes, 14 nays, 2 members absent, not voting. More than a majority of those present having voted in the affirmative, chair declares the bill passed. Clerk will please report the title.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2204.
Are there amendments to the title? If not, title as read by the clerk will be and remain the title of the bill. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate. Request concurrence therein. Next bill on third reading.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2479, Corporate Governance Annual Disclosure Act.
Gentleman of the 27th, Delegate Schott, to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. 2479 was introduced at the request of the Office of the Insurance Commissioner. The changes that are contained within the bill must be adopted. Let me make that clear. Must be adopted in order for West Virginia to maintain its accreditation with the National Association of Insurance Commissioners. The bill essentially does only two things. First, it requires certain insurers or groups of insurers to maintain an internal audit function, and that's based on the size of those insurers. Secondly, it adopts a model act that requires the filing of an annual corporate governance disclosure. Mr. Speaker, that's the essence of the bill. I'm prepared to answer questions if need be. Otherwise, I urge its passage.
Question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Are there members who wish to speak to the passage of the bill? If not, the question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On this question, 98 ayes, 0 nays, 2 members absent not voting. More than a majority of those present having voted in the affirmative, chair declares the bill passed. Clerk will please report the title.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2479.
Are there amendments to the title? If not, title as read by the clerk will be and remain the title of the bill. Clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate. Request concurrence therein. Next bill on third reading.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2481, permitting retail sale of alcoholic beverages on Sundays after 1 p.m.
Gentleman from the 35th, Doug Capito, to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Currently, under West Virginia law, vendors, nobody in West Virginia that are retail liquor sales can sell any liquor on Sunday. This bill seeks to change that by putting liquor sales on the same and equal footing as beer sales in West Virginia, which means that liquor could be sold in West Virginia at retail locations between the hours of 1 p.m. and midnight on Sundays. That's the bill, Mr. Speaker. I urge passage.
The question before the House is the passage, or is shall the bill pass? Are there members who wish to speak to the passage of the bill? Gentleman from the 27th, Doug Porterfield.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to make sure I'm on. I rise in opposition to this bill because I think any expansion of alcohol is not going to make West Virginia a better place to live, work, or raise a family. I believe as we expand any type of alcohol, we also got to look at the crime. We got to look at the families that are going to be broke up and all the other things that come along with it. And I would just urge everyone to please vote no to this bill. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I appreciate your time.
Are there other members who wish to speak to the passage of the bill? Gentleman from the 47th, Doug Phillips.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to ask for a Rule 49.
As the gentleman has explained the facts, the gentleman is the holder of a license that would be affected by this bill. As such, he is the member of a class of many more than 5 and would therefore be directed to vote. Are there other members who wish to speak to the passage of the bill? If not, the question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On this question, 85 ayes, 13 nays, 2 members absent not voting. More than a majority of those present having voted in the affirmative, chair declares the bill passed. Clerk will please report the title.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2481.
Are there amendments to the title? If not, title as read by the clerk will be and remain the title of the bill. Lady from the 49th.
Mr. Speaker, I move that the bill take effect from its passage.
Lady from the 49th moves that the bill be made effective from passage. Those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On this question, 86 ayes, 12 nays, 2 members absent not voting. 2/3 of those elected having voted in the affirmative, chair declares the bill effective from passage. Clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate and request concurrence therein. Next bill on third reading.
House Bill 2608, repealing the requirement of printing the date a consumer deposit account was opened on paper checks.
Gentleman from the 35th, Doug Nelson, to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. House Bill 2608 may be the shortest bill I have had since I've served. Anyway, the purpose of this bill is to repeal a 35-year-old section of code that does exactly as the title says. It repeals the requirement of printing the date open on consumer deposit checking accounts. The bill received full endorsement of the Bankers Association, the Community Bankers Association, the Division of Financial Institutions, and your Banking and Insurance Committee. Mr. Speaker, I urge passage.
Question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Are there members who wish to speak to the passage of the bill? If not, those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On this question, 98 ayes, 0 nays, 2 members absent not voting. More than a majority of those present having voted in the affirmative, chair declares the bill passed. Clerk will please report the title.
House Bill 2608.
Are there amendments to the title? If not, title as read by the clerk will be and remain the title of the bill. Clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate. Request concurrence therein. Next bill on third reading.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2686, relating to permitting the Supreme Court of Appeals of West Virginia to create a family drug court pilot program.
Gentleman from the 27th, Doug Schott, to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. House Bill 2686 permits the Supreme Court. In other words, the word permit means it's permissive and not mandatory. Permits the court to implement a family drug treatment court, and it would be a pilot program in at least 4 of the state's counties. These courts are envisioned to offer judicial monitoring of intensive treatment and strict supervision of individuals with substance abuse disorder who are involved in a child abuse and neglect case. The bill permits the Supreme Court to provide oversight, technical assistance, and training for these courts. It also establishes a state family drug court treatment advisory committee and a local advisory committee in those counties with this program, this pilot program. The local committee will establish the criteria for eligibility and participation in these courts. Participation in these family drug treatment courts shall be voluntary. It is our understanding that the Supreme Court and several circuit judges have already been looking into the establishments of these type of courts. Our committee heard from a circuit court judge who described the devastating impact that the drug epidemic has had on families in his area, and it is hoped that the drug treatment courts, like the ones contemplated in this bill, will help families that have someone suffering from a substance abuse disorder. Mr. Speaker, I urge passage.
Question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Are there members who wish to speak to the passage of the bill? Gentleman at 36, Delegate Robinson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think everyone in the body knows that the others outside of here might not realize how often the staff behind us actually create legislation and put it together, and how much work that goes into before we get to vote on it each day. And this, along with the chairman from substance abuse, was came from the mind of one of our staff, Emily Hanna, and I just want to thank her for being a part of this and getting this legislation this far. And please vote yes.
Are there other members who wish to speak to the passage of the bill? If not, the question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On this question, 98 ayes, 0 nays, 2 members absent not voting. More than a majority of those present having voted in the affirmative, the chair declares the bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2686.
Are there amendments to the title? If not, title as read by the clerk will be and remain the title of the bill. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate and request concurrence therein. Are there further bills on third reading? Bills on second reading?
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 240, repealing certain legislative rules no longer authorized or obsolete.
Lady from the 49th.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to move the bill to third reading with amendments pending.
Lady from the 49th asked unanimous consent that the bill be moved to third reading with the amendments pending. Are there objections? Does Lady from the 51st object? Are there objections? If not, the bill will be advanced to third reading with amendments pending. Next bill on second reading.
Senate Bill 354, expiring funds to balance of Auditor's Office Chief Inspector's Fund.
Are there amendments? If not, the bill will be advanced.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2365, clarifying the definition of an employee for the purposes of unemployment compensation and workers' compensation.
Lady from the 49th.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to postpone action one day.
Lady from the 49th asked unanimous consent to postpone action on committee substitute for House Bill 2365 one day. Are there objections? Chair hears no objections. Next bill on second reading.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2392, allowing the Alcohol Beverage Control Commissioner to issue special one-day licenses for charitable events.
Are there amendments? If not, the bill will be advanced.
House Bill 2528, relating to employees of the Commissioner of Agriculture.
Are there amendments? If not, the bill will be advanced.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2545, exempting recipients of the Distinguished Purple Heart Medal from payment of the vehicle registration fee.
Are there amendments? If not, the bill will be advanced.
House Bill 2546, excluding from tax equipment installed in a motor vehicle for use of a person with a medical necessity.
Are there amendments? The bill will be advanced.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2554, relating to transfers and enrollment policies for students in public schools.
Are there amendments? If not, the bill will be advanced.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2601, relating to the review and approval of state property leases.
Are there amendments? The bill will be advanced.
House Bill 2696, creating an additional index system for state-owned lands.
Are there amendments? The bill will be advanced.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2737, relating to training of state tax division employees.
Are there amendments? The bill will be advanced.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2740, barring a patient from inheriting from a child in certain instances.
Are there amendments? The bill will be advanced.
House Bill 2746, relating to administration of estates.
Are there amendments?
Delegate Schott moves to amend the bill. This is HFA Schott 2-7, number 1.
Does the gentleman from the 27th wish to explain the amendment?
Mr. Speaker, I'd ask unanimous consent that the bill advance to third with amendments pending.
Gentleman from the 27th asks unanimous consent that House Bill 2746 be advanced to third reading with amendments pending. Are there objections? Chair hears no objections. Bill will be advanced. Next bill on second reading.
House Bill 2759, providing for the ancillary administration of West Virginia real estate owned by non-residents by affidavit and without administration.
Are there amendments? Bill will be advanced.
House Bill 2815, raising the value of goods or chattels that are taken in a larceny to constitute a grand larceny.
Are there amendments? If not, bill will be advanced. Are there further bills on second reading? Bills on first reading.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2468, Department of Agriculture Capital Improvements Fund.
Bill will be advanced.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2583, Family Planning Access Act.
Bill will be advanced.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2661, relating to natural gas utilities.
Bill will be advanced.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2809, relating to prohibited acts and penalties in the Hatfield-McCoy Recreation Area.
Bill will be advanced. Are there further bills on first reading? If not, leaves of absence. Lady from the 49th.
Mr. Speaker, for our colleagues Kump and Byrd.
Are there objections that leaves be granted? Chair hears no objections. Leave shall be granted. Remarks by members of the House. Remarks by members of the House. The lady from the 51st, Douglas Fleischauer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to invite all of you and anyone from the general public to come to something that is called an unequal happy hour. It's this evening from 6 to 8 o'clock at Sam's Uptown Cafe. And the reason this is being held is to share information about the pay gap in West Virginia. We have a pay gap that is 24% between men and women. So that means that when men earn $1, women own, it must be 28%, 72 or 74 cents. It's a big, big amount of money that affects both the women, because it says we aren't as valuable, and also families. I also want to tell you about a bill that is coming up, and I hope the gentleman from Fayette will put it on the agenda. It is House Bill 2308, and what it does is it would put into West Virginia law something that is already part of the National Labor Relations Act, and that is that employers are not allowed to have secrecy policies when it comes to wages. So what that means is that you would be allowed to share your wages with someone else. You would be allowed to tell them, and someone else would be allowed to tell you what their wages are. The reason that's important is because when you have a secrecy policy, it can perpetuate discrimination. And there are studies out there that show that employees that work for private companies where they have gotten rid of these secrecy rules are happier and more productive. So I hope you'll join us this evening. It's at Sam's Uptown Cafe between 6 and 8, and join us to celebrate an unequal happy hour and help us try to get this bill passed, which is law in several other states. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman from the 64th, Douglas Householder.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm requesting the availability of the chamber for Monday morning at 8 a.m. Is the chamber available?
Chamber is available.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Finance will hold a public hearing on Senate Bill 451 Monday morning on February the 11th at 8 a.m.
Are there further remarks by members? The gentleman from the 51st, Elgin Hansen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to talk about an amendment that was discussed at length in government organization yesterday afternoon. An amendment that, if it had passed, would have done away with non-discrimination ordinances passed by the city of Morgantown and Fairmont and other communities across the state. I'm rising today because I just cannot even believe that this is something that we're talking about here at the legislature, undoing these non-discrimination ordinances, instead of taking proactive steps to pass a non-discrimination ordinance for the entire state. I just don't think it's fair that somebody should lose their job because their boss finds out that they're gay. And I don't think it's fair that somebody should be kicked out of their apartment because they choose to come out of the closet. To me, it's a fairness issue. And it's not just that, it's an economic development issue. Now, the discussion got a little heated yesterday afternoon, and we were called socialists, and names were being called. I'm a small business owner, I'm an employer in West Virginia, I'm not a socialist. These non-discrimination ordinances are supported by the Chamber of Commerce. The Chamber of Commerce is not a group of socialists. I represent a district in Monongalia County that includes Morgantown, that includes West Virginia University, that includes a lot of employers that are competing on the national stage to bring the best and the brightest employees here to West Virginia. And unless we have a non-discrimination ordinance like we have in Morgantown, we're not on a level playing field with the rest of the country that does. So in summary, I just would like to state that I believe that all kinds are welcome here in West Virginia, and I hope that you all agree. Thank you.
The gentleman of 36, Doggett Road.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today in the Charleston Gazette, there's an article about our own Dr. Gupta, who was our state health director and is now in Washington. He testified before Congress and made the point that the Texas ruling that found the entire ACA, Affordable Care Act, to be unconstitutional has perhaps unintended consequences. I just wanted to point out that in terms of the numbers, in West Virginia, 740,000 people have pre-existing conditions. That would include, high blood pressure and different conditions like that cannot be redlined by an insurance company because of the ACA. 540,000 West Virginians enrolled in the expansion of Medicaid. There are thousands of young people who are now insured on their families' policies through age 26, and there are 410,000 people on Medicare in West Virginia who need help of the ACA regarding their prescription costs. And I think that it's an interesting and very informative newspaper article. I recommend that you read it. I think that it's something that we should pay attention to because it affects the lives of so many West Virginians. Now, it is in federal court. It is on appeal. I think there's a general feeling around the country that it's such a bad decision and so sweeping that it will be on appeal reversed. Now, whether it's reversed in regard to pre-existing conditions, who knows? Will it be reversed in regard to children on their parents' policies through age 26, or to help Medicare patients with their prescription drugs? That's all to be seen. But I think we as representatives of the people and people who are protected by the Affordable Care Act ought to be concerned about this legislation. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The lady from 32nd, Doggett Kessinger.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today I rise in support of the American Heart Association. Go Red for Women is celebrating its 15th anniversary with a continued movement to motivate women to learn their family history and meet with a healthcare provider to determine their risk for cardiovascular disease and stroke. Go Red has made significant progress in the fight against heart disease and stroke. The simple fact is that 1 in 3 women continue to lose their lives to cardiovascular diseases. That's a third of mothers, sisters, and friends. Did you know that cardiovascular diseases are the #1 killer of women in the United States? Cardiovascular disease kills one woman almost every 80 seconds in the United States. About 80% of cardiovascular diseases may be prevented. Risk factors for heart disease such as blood pressure, smoking, and cholesterol can be controlled. Women are encouraged to commit to increasing awareness, speaking out about heart disease, and empowering women to reduce their risk for cardiovascular diseases and to stand together with Go Red and taking charge of their own heart health. Together, there is nothing women can't achieve.
The gentleman, the 17th, Doggett Rohrbach.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to arise just briefly to thank the members of this body for a vote that everybody in this chamber just took. It's on House Bill 2686. Creation of the family drug courts. You say, well, why is that important? Well, I think it's very important. As our committee has drilled down into the substance abuse problem, this is often it's a family problem. So you have to take a holistic approach to this. And it's going to be a pilot program through our courts, and our state Supreme Court's going to administer it. There's a little bit of cost to it, not a lot. But I think the benefits to this state through getting families engaged and to try to make the recovery really stick, to get the family unit functioning, we can get thousands times back the return of what little bit of money that we'll put into the creation of family drug courts. So as they start to, hopefully, if the Senate will concur and the governor will concur, as they start to pop up in your communities, I urge you to support them on your local level, because to me, this is one of the real necessary steps to get people back into recovery, make the recovery stick, and to try to get past this awful epidemic that is gripping our state. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman at 36, Douglas Robinson.
Speaker, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would just ask unanimous consent that the comments by the gentleman from the 17th regarding family drug court be printed in the appendix of the journal.
Are there objections? Chair hears no objections. The lady from the 51st.
Thank you. I'd like to ask unanimous consent that the gentleman from the 51st who spoke today about trying to end discrimination in our state be printed in the appendix to the journal.
Are there objections? Chair hears no objections. Gentleman from the 62nd, Douglas Bibby.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just want to correct the record from the gentleman from the 17th. Yesterday in government organization, that discussion had nothing to do with anti-discrimination. It was pure and simple. We were trying to put an amendment that we would not create any protected class that did not already exist under federal and state law. Pure and simple. There was nothing anti-discriminatory about it. And I just want to rise up and make sure the record is clear that there was no attempt by anybody to discriminate against anybody yesterday in this chamber or in the Government Affairs Office. Thank you.
The gentleman from the 16th, Douglas Limble.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today as a beekeeper, and I would like to educate those of us here about the importance of the honeybee. First things first, I'd like to offer anyone in this chamber or any member of the public that happens to be here to be able to come over to my office, and I have some of my honey and little honey bears. It's primarily tulip poplar, which I hear is actually one of these flowers that happens to be up on our ceiling here, designed by good old Cass Gilbert. Actually, this might have been after Cass. Anyway, the long and short of it, folks, bees, depending on who you ask, are responsible for pollinating the food in anywhere from 10% to 1 in 3 bites that you actually take. And folks, as a beekeeper, I've got to tell you, I garden. Basically, if you keep bees and you have a garden, every one of your plants is going to double its yield, in my experience anyway. Folks, bees are currently in a lot of trouble. There's something called colony collapse disorder, and that is causing over the winters for a huge number of our bee populations to actually die off. And there's a cause to that, and there's a huge work here in the state of West Virginia with the West Virginia Beekeepers Association, the Cabell Wayne Beekeepers Association, of which I'm a member. And essentially what we're trying to do is to breed a better honeybee. And so in partnership with Purdue University, with Cornell University, and some of our local universities, we are doing our absolute best to try to create honeybees that are resistant to something called the Varroa mite. And the Varroa mite actually is this thing that, if you imagine a tick on a dog, that's what this is to a bee. And it transfers diseases over the winter. And unfortunately, what we run into is, over the winter, new baby bees aren't produced. And basically what they're generally supposed to do is hover around the queen and just kind of shiver to keep her warm all winter. But unfortunately, if some of those worker bees get sick and happen to die, there's not enough of them to shiver around that queen and keep her warm all winter. And so, as a result, if she dies, your whole colony dies. And so there's actually bees that we're beginning to produce that are able to actually pull those mites off of their fellow bees, take them out of the hive, and continue to survive and not allow them to transfer those viruses and things of that nature. Folks, the honeybee is very important. I would invite you to come over to my office, have some of my delicious honey. Please support your bees, because being a beekeeper makes you a friend of the farmer. Thank you, folks. I appreciate everyone. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman from the 3rd, Dr. Fluharty.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last night, I heard stories about what took place in GovOrg yesterday, and this morning I had the opportunity to actually listen to the audio, and the gentleman from the 62nd stated that it wasn't about discrimination. I don't know. Maybe my ears were hearing things, but when I listened to the audio last night, I heard a member use the F word, and not the one we normally think of, one that's used for hatred, one that's used to say you're different than I am, one that's used to keep people out of our state. This morning on social media, I had friends posting about words that were said in that committee last night. They don't feel like they're welcome here. Good friends back home who follow politics, take pride in our state, don't feel like they're welcome. You know, the other day, our distinguished chair of judiciary stood up and talked about bills that may shape human events. Now, it was a good attempt on his part. Bills that may change human events. Well, we had that opportunity to change human events today on a motion on House Bill 2733. We had that opportunity to change human events, to say you're welcome here. We tabled it because it's not quite time yet to take up something that says you belong here. I don't know, as the gentleman pointed out from the 51st, Fortune 500 companies seem to think it's a good deal. It's smart. But yet, we think we know better than Fortune 500 companies? Have you seen the statistics of our state? Virginia had a rough week, and now we're saying, hold my beer, Virginia. You know, we just passed legislation to get rid of antiquated laws, right? You should be able to sell liquor on Sundays. Okay, good deal. Get rid of the antiquated laws. We need to get rid of the antiquated thoughts in this chamber. Pass 2733, run the bill, so we don't have to make procedural motions. Put it on the agenda. I know you don't want me to stand up and go through the list of bills that we've passed. You wouldn't like that. So let's pass something important for people so they know they belong here, that we send a message to the rest of the country that we're not backwards, that we're not bigots. Let's do that for West Virginia. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman of the 65th, Douglas Brown.
Lady.
Lady from the 65th.
Mr. Speaker, I rise because it seems that we have a crisis of character in this chamber. I will also agree with the gentleman from the 51st and the gentleman from the 3rd, where we did hear these comments that actually were very much bigoted. As someone who fought for those non-discrimination ordinances in the Eastern Panhandle, to my colleague in the 62nd, I will tell you to rescind those is absolutely regressive. I will also say to the gentleman in the corner that decided to speak.
Gentleman may state his point.
Mr. Speaker, I believe the rules say that we are to address the speaker and not address other members of the chamber.
The rules do say that members are to address the chair, but we are in remarks by members, so the chair will give some latitude to members in how they frame their comments in remarks by members, but chair would ask that all members observe decorum at all times. Lady may continue.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I will also say that earlier this week, regardless of the commentary, we had a sentiment that very much was against the progress of this community. It's against the progress of bipartisanship in this chamber. When I was elected to this body, I was elected by more than just Democrats. I was elected by the individuals of my hometown and the people in my community. And when I came here, I sought to fight for them. And I will fight for the gentlewoman in the 51st whose child could not come today because they did not feel welcome. I will continue to fight for people regardless of what is said in this chamber. And I will let you know this. While we are here, no one sought to have those comments put in the appendix of the journal. So I will move today, Mr. Speaker, that the comments from the gentleman of the 27th on Monday, that they will be recorded in the appendix of the journal, because you will be accountable for those comments, or you will be forced to overtly condemn them. Thank you.
The gentleman with the 62nd, Delegate Bibby.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Since I was directed, or the vitriol was directed at me, I'm going to repeat. The substance of the amendment said simply that that no city or county or any other body in the state could make a protected class that was not already considered that was already within federal and state law. That's pure and simple. That's all the amendment said. We are a body, or we are a nation of laws. We're a state of laws. That's all that amendment tried to do was ensure that no county out there, no city could create a law on their own that was in counter to West Virginia law and federal law. Pure and simple. That's all that amendment did. Now, the discussion went on all different directions, both sides. But that's not what I rose up to say. I rose up to correct the gentleman when he brought up the amendment that, if it were to pass, would have been anti-discriminatory or prevented anti-discriminatory laws within the state of West Virginia. That's not what that amendment did. Amendment simply, if you look at the amendment on its text, all it did was ensure that no city, no county could make up a protected class that was not already part of federal and state law, pure and simple. The rest of it, there's nothing to do with, it was all pure discussion. And remember, we are, and we should be, a body of laws, not of men. Thank you.
The gentleman with the 16th, Delegate Hornbuckle.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Feel really moved right now. The comments from the gentleman from the 51st, comments from the gentle lady from the 65th. Those are great things. But I've got to address, if you will, the gentleman from the 3rd. I call him my brother. It is increasingly tough to live and walk in these shoes. It's even tougher, to be honest, even though I love these mountains, to do it in this state. I know sometimes the gentleman from the 37th, who is brilliant, talks about these stereotypes. Well, they're real. They're real. And what we get into, this whole thing of we like to celebrate MLK Day, then we forget about it after that 24 hours. Nobody in here has really mentioned Black History Month, I don't think. But my brother from the 3rd, you're not being complicit. It took guts to say what you just said. Wasn't going to speak at all. And I love you and I appreciate that. Thank you.
The gentleman from the 44th, Delegate Hannah.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just wanted to stand up and say that it was so great today during introductions to see the North Gallery full of youth and young students and people engaged from all around the state. You know, as the youngest member of this body, I think it's really important for youth to be involved and engaged in what happens here in the state capitol. I mean, people don't realize that everything is affected by the decisions we make. From the air we breathe to the food we eat, it's affected to you in some way. I was involved in high school in a group called Inspire West Virginia. It was a youth voter registration group. And we would try to get all the students in our high schools to become registered voters. At my high school in Nicholas County, Richwood High School, we did register 100% of the students to vote. And each person, usually every time you would have a voter registration drive, someone would ask, why should I vote? And I would say to them, you know, what's one thing you care about? What's one thing you care about? And one girl said, well, my cat. I really care about my cat. And she said, I bet you that's not affected by politics. And I said, are you aware that in the state of West Virginia, we have a dog tax, but not a cat tax? Because dogs are considered property in the state of West Virginia, but cats are not. So I just wanted to say, you know, I'm so happy and thrilled that we had so many youth today in our chamber coming here to learn the process of what we do in this Capitol. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman at 67th, Doug Doyle.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I am happy to hear that in fact, the amendment which would have prevented local governments from having non-discrimination ordinances failed. In my district, there are 2 municipalities, Shepherdstown and Harpers Ferry, which have passed such ordinances. And in each case, one of the reasons they wanted to have the ordinance is that they believed that letting the world know that they were open communities would improve tourism. It has. Too many times I've heard arguments that we should not stifle local initiative. Well, we shouldn't. Thank you.
The gentleman from the 50th, Doug Caputo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I feel compelled to correct some comments today. I got a little on tilt yesterday in committee, but when I feel hate is being spread across West Virginia, it kind of moves me in a way that I don't like to be moved. I talked to my friend from the 51st this morning about it, and I rarely get emotionally charged when things tug at my heartstring like it did yesterday. And I actually sat in my hotel room last night, and I never left, and we shared this morning. And I actually teared up every time I thought about what went on in that committee. I was probably as angry as I have ever been in the House of Delegates. And I know I get referred to as a rambunctious hellraiser at times, and that might be my style. I get called a demagogue maybe 2 or 3 times a year. That's fine. But what you see is what you get, and one reputation I have earned in my career here is honesty. If I tell you something, it's the truth. You don't have to like it, but it's the truth. And I think my colleagues from the other side of the aisle who have served with me for many years will agree with that. But the gentleman from the 62nd wants to tell you what the amendment said. That's the only thing we'll agree on, what it said. But let's talk about what it did. I mean, if you want to put a fancy political spin on something like you hear on C-SPAN when Congress or the U.S. senators have the mic and they want to dance around everything except the brunt of the issue, then go ahead and do that. I asked the attorney, because I'm the one who probably sparked this debate. I asked the attorney, will this prevent municipalities from passing anti-discrimination ordinances in their communities? And the answer to that unequivocally from a longtime attorney who has served the Judiciary Committee for many years, he said, yes, it will. So that was the effect of the amendment. And another colleague asked, my community, I think it was my friend from the 50th, had already passed an anti-discrimination ordinance, and I think the gentleman from the 51st asked the same thing. Would this make those ordinances null and void? And once again, the answer to that was yes. So you can cut the cheese any way you want to cut it, but the effect of the amendment was to spread hate across West Virginia once again. That's what the amendment does. We all want to say we want companies to come to West Virginia. Yeah, I'm a big labor guy. I love the union. But I know I can't have members without companies. I want to attract large companies to West Virginia. And every one of those companies that I read about has anti-discrimination policies within their corporation. But yet we want to tell them we're so backwoods in West Virginia that we don't want to protect people because of who they love or who they are. It's shameful. It's absolutely shameful that we got into such a heated debate over an issue that our children can't understand why we fight about. I got two kids, 34 and 35. The minority leader and I were having this discussion this morning. They look at us and say, really? Really? You want to move West Virginia forward, but you want to tell someone you can't protect them because of who they love? I'll call big BS on that. If I was out on the steps, it wouldn't have been a BS. It would have been something else. Because that's what it is. It's hate. It's hate, it's hate, it's hate. And if anybody thinks any differently, they're only kidding themselves. Let's move West Virginia forward, not backward. I'm sick of the BS.
The gentleman at 6, Doug Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This might be a good time for us to step back from the current debate. And if I may, myself and the gentleman that just spoke, were both in this room a little bit ago when it was filled with veterans. Most of them were senior in age, but I was moved nearly to tears as I saw these great men and women being honored in this place. And I think today, as we have spirited debate, that's why we're all here, we're leaders. We were elected to come to this great place and sometimes have spirited debates. But right now, I'd like for us to pause from that and remember that just a little bit ago, we saw America's greatest. No, we saw West Virginia's greatest in this room. And I am honored to salute them today. I'm honored to salute the veterans in this building today. So thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me my moment.
The lady from the 51st, Doug Walker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As you look in that South Gallery, I want you to tell me what's missing. It's my 17-year-old that had one request while his mother was in session, was to be a part of All Kinds Welcome Day to honor his oldest brother who is gay. In the name of freedom, words, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words hurt deep inside. So let me give you a few that was said on yesterday. Behavior, socialist, persecute, agenda, public safety, freedom, protected classes, race, religion, age, sex, disability, harm, live and let live, inclusion, tolerance, intolerant, simple, compromise, values. Words without works are a waste. And I'm going to share with you, Mr. Speaker, 3 strikes that was embedded with me by my mother and father at the age of 2, what I could comprehend. Strike number 1, you're black. Strike number 2, you're a female. Strike number 3, you're poor. And I didn't sit in the corner and I didn't allow these things to tear me up. I sat in the front and I allowed these things to build me up. Freedom, the power or right to act, speak, or think as one wants without hindrance or restraint. Inclusion to me is everyone is included. No one or nothing is excluded. Hate, the feeling of something intense, a passionate dislike for someone. Now, you all remember I'm from Louisiana. Because of my year-round tan, for many centuries, that cause hate. Because I was born a female, meaning women didn't even have the right to vote. Today, 2019, because a state code says that I should be protected because of my race, because of my sex, I still have to fight even harder. Because I can't even get the same pay. House Bill 2308, the Katherine Johnson's equity pay bill, can't even get out of a committee. Maybe it's because of the name on the bill. Maybe it's because of her year-round tan. Maybe it's because she's just a female. It is Black History Month, February, 28 days. You know what's the most heartbreaking thing? When I speak to someone and they say, what do you prefer, Black or African American? Why can't I just not be a human person? Why can't I just be a human being? Why can't I just be a mother? Why can't I just be a delegate? Why can I not just be your equal? You look at me and you see what? I am an American, proud. I exemplify one love, whether you like it or not. You're either gonna love me or you're gonna love to hate me, but it's still love. I open my door, I open my phone, I open my heart, I open my ears, but most importantly, West Virginia opened me up to a whole new world where my children felt comfortable. They received a phenomenal education. They received phenomenal medical care. But in the people's house, my 17-year-old didn't feel welcome because of one isolated instance. He wasn't even in the committee room, thank God. Because yes, my child has autism. No, he would not have understood not to say a word in that meeting. We are hushed so much by what? What makes you keep pale to stay sitting and not take a stand? Because sometimes you take a stand by taking a seat and refusing to get off the bus. Sometimes you take a stand by taking a knee because you're tired of seeing so much bloodshed and hate. And sometimes you take a stand by putting your name on a ballot, knowing that you don't even have a fighting chance in hell. But the people have spoken, and they have spoken loud and clear. And it doesn't matter if you don't want me here, and it doesn't matter if you feel I'm not welcome, because the people of District 51 have spoken. I am their voice. I am Delegate Danielle Walker. I am a mother. I am an activist. I am an advocate. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. One love.
The gentleman at 29th, Delegate Steele.
Mr. Speaker, I move that the gentleman's remarks from the 16th on beekeeping be recorded in the appendix of the journal. Thank you.
Gentleman has moved that the remarks on beekeeping be added to the appendix of the journal. Those in favor will say aye. Those opposed will say no. The ayes have it. The motion is adopted. The gentleman from the 50th, Delegate Angelucci.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I ask that for unanimous consent for the words from my co-workers, or my colleagues, Delegate Fleischauer, Rowe, Fluharty, Brown, Caputo, Walker, Hornbuckle, and Doyle be printed in the appendix of the journal.
Are there objections? Are there objections? Chair hears no objections. So ordered. Further remarks by members. Gentleman from the 9th, Delegate Holland.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, I stand here every day, and I have the privilege to announce the Doctor of the Day. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to do that today because as time was going on, he had to go. but there may be members in here that don't really fully understand why I introduced a Doctor of the Day, nor they may not understand what the Doctor of the Day does. Well, this year marks the 30th anniversary for the Doctor of the Day program. And I've got some information I really want to share with everyone in here to clarify that maybe the questions, why is he doing it? Why is the doctor here? So, a little history. The West Virginia chapter of the Academy of Family Physicians sponsors the Doc for the Day program at the Capitol during each regular session of the West Virginia Legislature. It is annually authorized under agreement by the Speaker of the House of Delegates and the President of the State Senate. This year marks, again, the 30th anniversary for Doc of the Day program. The Doc of the Day program features family physicians from around the state who volunteer their professional medical services each day the legislature convenes and during regular session. The Doc for Today program also includes medical residents and physician faculty from Charleston Division of WVU Medical School and Marshall University Medical School. The family physicians provide volunteer medical services without any compensation as a public service. As of today, or as of this year, approximately 50,000 patients have received this free medical care since the Doc for Today program began in 1989. Medical care services are offered to legislatures, legislative staff, government officials, and visitors to the Capitol complex. Health insurance is not required, no fees are charged, and appointments are not necessary for medical services rendered by the Doc of the Day. The family physicians work in the Capitol dispensary, but are available for house calls anywhere in the Capitol or the Capitol complex. You know, and if the doc of the day is on duty, then again you see the Doc of the Day, or if need be an emergency arises, the Doc of the Day will be brought to you. If the Doc of the Day is not on duty, there is members of the in this body. I know there's a few members that are physicians and in the other body and maybe elsewhere in the Capitol that are permitted to see someone on their own time or on the time here under the scope of their practice. And there's also a full-time nurse available. You know, new members may not know, but there's a nurse available. I've went down several times, you know, maybe with a headache, she keeps, you know, Tylenol and some cough drops and things like that, that instead of taking time and having to run out away from the Capitol complex and doing the business for the people, that you get to go visit the nurse, and she's available in her office, and she will see you as needed. So, you know, I take advantage of the service instead of having to run out, and I think that for them to take the time out of their day to volunteer with no compensation is an upstanding act for the service and for the people of West Virginia. So again, if anyone needs that service, it's available. When I first got here, you know, I saw the Doc of the Day introduced. I'm like, what is the Doc of the Day being introduced every day for? And it's a different one every day. And many times they come from your areas that you represent. So again, just take advantage of that and appreciate them and thank them if you see them, because they do not have to be here to help us throughout the day. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman from the 51st, Delegate Piles.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just wanted to address something that was said earlier by the gentleman from Webster County. As a person who was a county assessor for 24 years, I was frequently asked why we tax dogs and not cats. There are a great many people that objected to that $3 tax on a dog, $3 or $6 tax on their dogs. It is really not because they're considered property. It's because dogs will run in packs and can attack people. They can be a danger. And so that's one of the reasons why we had a tax on dogs. Cats don't do that. A taxpayer, if they had a show dog, they could ask for a value to be assigned to that dog and have it taxed like other personal property. Not too many other people did it, but that's a little clarification on the taxation of dogs. Thank you.
He won't call.
The gentleman at 16th, Douglas Hornbuckle.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On behalf of all the Cabell County delegates, I want to congratulate 5 outstanding student athletes from the Huntington High on signing day yesterday. We have Max Howe, who signed to play at East Tennessee State, Ty Wilcoxon, that signed to play at Marshall, Bryce Damus, that signed to play at Garden City Community College, Christian Hanna, that signed to play at Glenville State, and I want you all to know that we also have the highest rated football recruit in the history of our great state of West Virginia, Darnell Wright, signed to play at the University of Tennessee. Thank you.
The gentleman at 27th, Tucker Porterfield.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to tell the delegate from the 16th here about, it seems like an hour ago, but it probably hasn't been that long, just about stole my thunder. I stand today in honor of Black History Month. I think about my ministry, Blind Faith Ministries, and taking my young wife in 2012 and beyond to the present, to the continent of Africa 3 different times, and then being there 4 times in addition to post-genocide Sudan, where terrible, terrible things have happened. People fighting and people just having differences that were shed by blood all through the street. I encourage you to look up South Sudan and what goes on there, and pray for Blind Faith Ministries. 2 of my closest friends in the world, Taban James and George Lambert, are there and oversee our work as I travel back and forth to help see churches started there, help get water systems distributed there, help get food distributed to those folks. And as February is Black History Month, I was afraid the delegate from the 16th was going to steal my thunder, and I was like, oh no. And but he just touched on it and then went on to something else. I would like to ask everyone to please be remembering Helen Taban, my friend James's wife there, during this time of Black History Month, that she's in desperate need of a back surgery. You know, one of the great things about being in the legislature is you meet people of so many different fields. And there's a doctor in this room, actually 2, that have worked and helped, and we're trying to coordinate to get her MRIs and x-rays looked at. And I'm hoping to do a GoFundMe to hopefully help her to get surgery as she lives in terrible conditions. Folks, the poorest communities in our nation would be the wealthiest communities there. And I've actually lived over there. In the midst of that with my young wife. We've spent 3 months at a time, 2 months at a time. We've seen rat-infested places. We've seen cockroaches come out. My wife often talks about me being her hero whenever there was a mouse running through and I pushed her into the floor off of the bed trying to sacrifice her to the mouse. So Blind Faith Ministries has done a lot of great things. We've worked in places and continue to work in those type of areas. Venezuela, as they go through so much right now, and the crisis that's there. I've been in Cuba, where people were some of the most educated people in the world, but yet they can't go out and express and work and live and breathe in freedom. And I just stand today in honor of Black History Month. I'd like to thank this body for existing and us having this great democratic process. And I hope everyone has a good day. Mr. Speaker, thank you.
The gentleman the 2nd, Douglas DeSerio.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to ask unanimous consent that the remarks from the gentleman from the 51st District on our dogs and cat tags be printed in the appendix of the journal.
Is there objection? Chair hears no objection to the dog and cat remarks being added to the appendix of the journal. The lady from the 51st, Douglas Fleischauer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The lady from the 51st reminded me something that I had intended to talk about in my little announcement about the unequal happy hour. Or two things, actually. I'm not sure that I mentioned that food and beverages will be, there'll be a lower charge for women to reflect the pay gap. Women will be charged 72 cents, whereas men will be charged $1. And the other part is that this Katherine Johnson Fair Pay Act, the reason it's named after her is because she was born in West Virginia. She was born in Greenbrier County in White Sulphur Springs. And she was in the movie Hidden Figures, and she was horribly discriminated against. If you saw that movie, it's one of the most moving and satisfying movies in the world because she was a brilliant mathematician. And she went to West Virginia State. She helped desegregate WVU for graduate school. She was one of 3 students that, and before Brown versus Board of Education. And then, I don't want to ruin the movie for you, but the most memorable part of the movie is that when John Glenn was going to go up into space, and they had this black female group of mathematicians that did calculations for NASA, he said, I want that young black woman to do the calculations before I go up into space, because he knew that she was the best. So we got the permission from her family. Ms. Katherine Johnson is nearly 100 years old. She did go to the Oscars ceremony. But Mr. Speaker, I'm hoping that during Black History Month, this body could pass that bill and make our whole state proud of Katherine Johnson. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Introduction to guests. Miscellaneous business. Gentleman from the 14th, Douglas Butler.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I request unanimous consent to return to the second order. Well, I don't know what order it is now. The guests, I wasn't quick enough on the button.
We're at introduction to guests. Gentleman may proceed.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Speaker. If they're still here, I'd like to introduce in the West Gallery 2 wonderful ladies who've become friends over the years. They operate the Gene Salem Senior Center in Point Pleasant, West Virginia. Those would be Renee Riffle and Ann Dalton. If you're still up there, please stand, and in the house, please welcome them.
The gentleman at 26, Douglas Evans.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm not sure if they're still in the gallery. I can't really see anything but the gallery to my right. But I'd like to introduce, if they're still here, Shakira Irvin and Tina Russell, if they're still in the gallery. Hi, girls.
Lady in the 57th, Douglas Rowan.
Mr. Speaker, from West Virginia's oldest county, I have our senior director, Julie Linger. So if you'll please stand, and if the House would please give her a wide and wonderful West Virginia welcome.
Are there further introductions? If not, miscellaneous business. The lady from the 65th has asked unanimous consent that the remarks by the gentleman from the 27th from Monday, February 4th, 2019, be added to the appendix of the journal. Are there objections? Are there objections? Chair hears no objections. Other miscellaneous business? If not, lady from the 49th.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move, subject to announcements, that the House adjourn until 11 a.m. Friday, February 8th.
Lady from the 49th moves that, subject to announcements, the House stand adjourned until 11 a.m. on Friday, February 8th. Are there announcements? Gentleman from the 10th, Douglas Chris.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Finance will meet Friday morning at 9 a.m. to take up legislation. The agenda will be posted. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman 27th, Douglas Schott.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. First of all, the Committee on the Judiciary will meet tomorrow at 9 a.m. The agenda will be posted. Would also inquire of the whether the availability of the chamber for a public hearing on Monday, February 11th at 2 p.m.
Chamber is available.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To the members, on Monday, this next Monday, February 11th at 2 p.m., the Committee on the Judiciary will conduct a public hearing on House Bill 2519, which is entitled the Campus Self-Defense Act, also sometimes referred to as Campus Carry. If you represent a district in which there's a public college, university, or community and technical college, this bill should be of particular interest to you. It has a significant effect on all of those institutions, and I would encourage you, if you can be here, and in addition to those members of our committee, if you can be here, you should be here. For instance, some of the issues that will be addressed, there are only 4 of 10 states that currently have some form of campus carry that permit firearms on residence halls, and our bill is silent on that. That's certainly an issue that we will be developing. Of those 4, 2 of them have some limitations on that. So I think if you're interested in local control or choice, individual choice, you certainly ought to plan on attending that public hearing and monitoring the progress of that bill. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman 21st, Doug Dean.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Education will continue our posted agenda at 4:30 today in the Gov Org Room. Also, we will be meeting tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. in the Government Organization Room. The agenda for that will be posted. Republican members will caucus today at 1:15 in the Chairman's office. Thank you.
The gentleman 28th, Doug Pack.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Government Organization will meet tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. in the House Education Committee room. The agenda will be posted.
Gentleman 9th, Doug Holland.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Prevention and Treatment of Substance Abuse will meet today at 3:30, room 215E. The agenda is posted.
Gentleman 12th, Doug Westfall.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to announce we have lunch again this week in 204E. First come, first served like last week. We run out last week. Hopefully won't today. So thank you.
Gentleman the 10th, Doug Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Energy will meet today at 2 o'clock in the Judiciary Committee room. The agenda is posted. The Republican members will caucus in the Chairman's office at 1:30.
Gentleman the 41st, Doug Hill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Health and Human Resources will meet today at 2 p.m. In room 215E. The agenda is posted, and the Republican members will caucus at 1:30 in the Chairman's office.
Gentleman the 16th, Doug Linville.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Technology and Infrastructure Committee Subcommittee on Road and Bridge Naming Resolutions will meet tomorrow, immediately following the floor session in the Chairman's office, 216. The agenda has been posted. Also in 216, at everyone's leisure, is some tulip poplar honey from my farm in Milton, West Virginia. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman the 17th, Doug Rohrbach.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Seniors, Children, and Family Issues will meet today at 1 p.m. in the Government Organization Room. Thank you.
Lady from the 32nd, Douglas Staggers.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Democratic members of Health and Human Resources will caucus today, room 230 East. See y'all there.
Gentleman the 50th, Doug Caputo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Due to the extended session today, Democrats will not caucus today after session, will not caucus. But, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to remind the body in regard to my friend from the 16th inviting members over to sample his honey. A few years ago, somebody from over there asked us to come over and have some samples. Y'all remember what happened then. So just...
Lady from the 49th.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The last day to introduce bills is February 12th. Members need to have their bills to bill drafting pre-approved by February 8th for introduction.
Remind the members we are at announcements. Gentleman the 16th.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would just like to announce that honey was found in King Tut's tomb that was still edible. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Chair can't disagree with that. Question for the House is a motion by the lady from the 49th that the House stand adjourned until 11 a.m. tomorrow. Those in favor will say aye. Those opposed will say no. The ayes have it. The motion is adopted. The House is adjourned until 11 a.m. tomorrow.